Bex on 106 Live Radio. Atlanta's music leader.
Are you tired of political talk radio that would rather enrage than inform? Are you ready for a program that reflects both your interests and your values? Hello, I'm Charlie Levinson, lifelong Georgia resident and third-generation political activist, inviting you to a different kind of talk radio experience, the Progressive Weekly, on 106 Live Radio. Everyone, and welcome back to the Progressive Weekly right here on 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. And I am so excited for the guest we're going to have. He's actually a guest today, regular panelist going forward. It will be my pleasure after the break to introduce him to you. The format today is we're just going to cover a wide variety of national and international politics. Feel free to call in with your questions, comments, and concerns. The number is 404-464-8785. We love to hear from you. I'd like to think this is your show. This is about the people, your concerns, your interests, your values. We welcome you. This is our third episode. I can't believe we've gotten this far, but I want to definitely thank once again station management and your viewership. Viewership numbers have been strong, and hopefully they will continue to strengthen in the weeks ahead. So sit back, relax. Hope you're looking forward to a wonderful weekend, and we will be back in a minute with the show. This is 106liveradio.com. Please stand by. It's Friday, which means another edition of Progressive Weekly, 106 Live Radio. Join us for amazing guests, stimulating panel discussions, and most importantly, your calls and questions at 404-464-8785. Join me, Charlie Levinson, lifelong Georgia resident and third-generation political activist, for an informative hour of political talk on 106 Live Radio. Welcome back to 106liveradio.com, and it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Bernard Tanner Jr. Bernard, I thought long and hard about how to introduce you, and I decided on something. I just hope that our viewers have some familiarity with Star Trek, because, Bernard, I consider you a passionate Vulcan. You are dedicated to logic and reason and balance, but there's a heart there that's on your sleeve too. You believe passionately, and you let that passion show in so many ways. And it's the fusion of these two in such a wonderful way that when we first met on Cobb Community Transit those years ago.
So many years ago.
That was the beginning of as Mr. Bogart would say, a beautiful friendship. That we continue to this day. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. So many irons in the fire, many things kicking off, and just trying to live life to the full and do all the good. There was an expression that I heard from a tape of Star Trek. It
Mhm.
was Spock versus Q.
I didn't know that
And
one. Mhm.
and in the end, he said, do all the good you can to all the people you can, in all the places you can, as often as you can, by all the means that you can,
For as long as you can.
for as long as you can.
Yes.
Then fear not, for love shall guide the stars.
Yes.
So that's my mission.
Excellent.
And I believe that part of that is telling the truth.
Mhm.
I don't believe that there's any such thing as a noble lie.
Mhm.
I think that lies are dangerous.
Yes.
There was something that President Kennedy said. He said the enemy of the truth is not even usually the outright lie, it's the comforting myth.
Mm-hmm.
And that myth will cause you to believe in the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not believe in that. I
Right.
believe that there is only us.
Yes.
Like Carl Sagan said, we're on this pale blue dot, and that we have got to work it out. We've got to figure out a way to have our species and the planet survive.
Exactly.
There is no other, as Dr. King said. There is
Exactly.
no other.
Exactly. But we are
Mhm.
being naive if
Mhm.
we do not understand the power of these myths
Mhm.
in the hearts and minds of so many.
Mhm.
And that extends to politics, not just in the United
Mhm.
States, but around the world. Bernard, let's begin with the critically important French presidential runoff. This Sunday, it is Macron versus Le Pen again. Emmanuel Macron was the upstart challenger in 2017. Now he is the incumbent, facing a lot of the challenges we're facing, rising costs of living, supply chain issues. And he is up against his old enemy, Marine Le Pen, from the neo-fascist element in France. She's trying to mask that fascism, trying to tone it down, focusing on the kitchen table economic issues, but that leopard is never going to change her spots.
No. She is her father,
Yes.
a more attractive physical representation of the awfulness that her father was.
Yes, and there's a long-standing tradition of fascism in France. These were the same fascists that collaborated with Nazi Germany, that welcomed them in as the government collapsed there, and the British, of course, retreated at Dunkirk. But here we are again. Obviously, Macron. We may have our issues with Macron's commitment to the social safety net, but he's clearly the better alternative at this point. He led in the first round by about 5 or 6 points. Jean-Luc Mélenchon of the far left came in a strong third. He almost took the second spot. The other candidates, did not crack double digits, handicap the race right now. Where do you see the second round going?
I cannot. Maybe it's the optimism, even sometimes in the darkest of my cynical moments, but I cannot see the French going with Le Pen.
I don't either.
I cannot.
I don't see a 2-1 blowout, which the 2017 runoff was. Basically, the entire French political establishment consolidated against Le Pen and gave an overwhelming victory to Macron. That's not going to happen this time, because now that Macron is the incumbent, he is getting, fairly or unfairly, a lot of the blame for the difficulties that the French economy is facing right now. But Mélenchon, to his credit, said when he conceded, when he realized he was not going to get that second spot, he said, however we feel about the incumbent president, we must not allow Le Pen back. We will not allow Le Pen to win, because luckily she has never been president. So we've never and he placed a very strong third, 21% to Le Pen's 23 to Macron's 28. So I just hope that the Euroscepticism that we see is on the French right is also prevalent on the French left too.
As here.
And so you've got it's like the centrist see the center right, the center left, they seem to be most supportive, or at least most accepting of global integration, the integration of our economic systems, our supply chains, etc. But there's still a lot of isolationism on the extremes. And I just hope that the far left keeps their head about them and understands, yeah, that may be one issue where the extremes agree, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
And in today's world,
Mhm.
as always throughout human history, there's never really, rare cases, such as Japan before Perry came in with the gunboats.
Mhm.
But in today's world, isolationism really doesn't work,
Right.
especially from the standpoint of America, when we know, according to the honesty of what they will reveal in the base
Mhm.
report, we've got 800 bases in other people's countries.
Mhm.
So how are we isolated?
Yeah.
The philosophy is just completely ridiculous on its head.
Mhm.
Uh, as Dr. King used to say in one speech, we're in a world now where you can get on a jet, and in between that flight from here to there, cross country, across the world, you can develop hiccups. And upon that trip, you will hick in Los Angeles and cup in New York City. That's the world that
Mhm.
we live in.
Right.
So there is no such thing as isolationism.
Right.
This pandemic that has overtaken the world
Mhm.
began in one city in
Yeah.
China,
Mhm.
but it has overtaken the world.
Yeah.
The Spanish flu that would go on to kill at least 26 million people.
Mhm.
We now know the epicenter. It was in Fort Riley, Kansas,
Mhm.
from the pigs at an
Mhm.
army base,
Yeah.
but it overtook the world.
Right.
This is the world that we live in now.
Mhm.
So there really is no such thing.
Mhm.
So
And this was back in 1918,
19
before we had the global supply
Mhm.
chains and global economic systems. And really, I think the left in both Europe and the United States needs to grow up, because when people advocate for isolationism, whether it's from a right-wing base or a left-wing base, they're not promising anything that's deliverable.
No.
The global economy has integrated, like it or not. That's the world. And the thing for the left and for progressives to do is to manage that integration in ways that improve the overall human condition,
Mhm.
that improve rights for workers, for women, improve the environment, which is absolutely critical.
It's critical. Without that,
Mhm.
how can human
Right.
life survive?
Right.
We
And
need air, we need clean water,
Mhm.
we need grass, we need trees.
Yes.
If that's destroyed, we
Mhm.
become the cancer to the environment. Where, as Einstein once said, if all the bees are gone,
Mhm.
say goodbye to the human species as well.
Right, because how will plants pollinate? How do we feed ourselves? It's like I was saying on our first show, how if it, talking about the Russian dependence on fossil fuels, good for them in the short term because they have the reserves to draw on. But if climate change is affecting Russian agricultural capacity as well, how are Russians supposed to eat? So I think, but going back to, and we'll shift over to some other presidential elections shortly. But Mélenchon himself was isolationist. What I found disqualifying about him, and why I would have stuck with Macron had I been a voter there, um, Mélenchon wanted to withdraw France from NATO.
Mhm.
Particularly now, that's a disqualifying
It
position.
does. That's
His
terrible.
Euroscepticism as well,
Mhm.
completely disqualifying. And when you have the left taking basically an anti-intellectual position, which is to say that isolationism is can be accomplished when it cannot be accomplished,
Mhm.
then what's the difference? We know the right wing is selling anti-intellectual nonsense. When the left starts doing the same thing, then the political system descends into total incoherence and defeat. Hence, Jeremy Corbyn in the United Kingdom. That campaign was a disaster because Corbyn was leading an anti-Brexit Labour. Most of Labour was anti-Brexit, but he himself was dallying with being pro-Brexit. And as a result, nobody knew what the heck Labour stood for. And of course, Labour got destroyed by a patently corrupt but charismatic Boris Johnson.
Mhm.
So I think it's time for the left to say, you know what? It's time to embrace globalism in a way that that benefits the human condition. But globalism is here to stay, and to promise otherwise is fundamentally dishonest and fundamentally intellectual. And I
And
think that's what held Mélenchon back, and why he is not in the runoff with Macron.
and it is fundamentally impossible.
Mhm.
We get the wheelbarrow from the Chinese,
Mhm.
paper from the Chinese,
Mhm.
gunpowder from the Chinese. What, do we give it back and no longer use it? The numbers that we use, we got them from Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
from the Arabians, the
Mhm.
zero from the East Indians. Without that zero, we don't have binary technology, which makes these digital television, cameras,
Mhm.
and phones possible. This is you cannot put that genie back in the bottle. It's impossible.
Mhm.
There was a reason why, vocal artists like Elvis Presley wanted to sing the black music of that era. He deemed it correctly to be the best.
Mhm.
He had the vocal talent to sing country music or anything else,
Mhm.
but he wanted to sing that music because he loved that music.
Mhm.
So anyone taking that view politically, they're asking for something that is literally impossible.
Mhm.
You cannot recork that bottle.
Right.
We belong on this planet. This is where we are. This is
Mhm.
where we will be.
Mhm.
And we are interconnected with every other culture.
Mhm.
Our language, so many words come from other cultures.
Mhm.
That's just how it is. We are an interconnected species. So we have to
Mhm.
care. One of my favorite films was by Cary Grant, was a film called Number the Lonely Heart, where
Mhm.
he played a Cockney.
Mhm.
And he said something that affected me for the rest of my life. There was a scene in it where he was telling this woman, he said, "I had me a dream last night." And she said, "Oh, did you?" She said, "Yeah, I did." "What happened in this dream of yours?" He said, "It was a queer thing. I saw from a great distance what appeared to be a hideous animal. I came closer, and I saw it was a man. I came closer still, and I saw it was me brother." That's where we are. We have to look closely.
Mhm.
There is no other.
Right.
Look closely.
Mhm.
That's your brother.
Right. Right.
And unless we come to understand that, as Dr. King said,
Mhm.
with these terrible weapons of warfare,
Mhm.
we will either have a brotherhood
Mhm.
or we will all soon perish as fools.
Yeah. It's either a brotherhood or a graveyard.
That's it.
Those are choices, and the fact that you
Mhm.
bring up these older
Mhm.
examples
Mhm.
means that isolationism, whether it was today's isolationism or the isolationism from decades past, has always been impractical.
It's impractical and it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. The thought that, okay, Hitler will stop at the borders of Europe. No, those Nazis were intent on world conquest.
Right.
That includes you eventually.
Yes.
Now, if all these other nations are defeated, now you stand alone, and that's
Mhm.
much more difficult.
Yes.
You have to join in.
Mhm.
As President Kennedy said, the only way for evil to ever succeed
Mhm.
is for good men to do nothing.
Nothing. Yes.
You have to speak up. You
Mhm.
have to stand up.
Mhm.
What will start at one point, that fire may have started all over. This virus, it started in one city.
Mhm.
Around now, it's around the world.
Yeah.
That's where it
Just
started.
like the Spanish flu did in
Just
1918. So you
Mhm.
can't blame modern technology, because the same thing happened a century ago.
A century ago. And what happened is the American soldiers
Mhm.
coming over on those ships into France
Mhm.
brought it with them.
Yep.
First infecting the French, and from there the rest
Mhm.
of the world.
Yep.
But this is before what we have now. So
Right.
it is just literally impossible.
Right.
It is you may as well try to make a circle square.
Yeah.
It's just something that is just fundamentally
Mhm.
impossible.
Before we
Mhm.
go to break, another example of interconnectedness is the environmental concerns we're
Mhm.
facing. Recent UN report, very depressing. Brazilian deforestation
The
is
lungs of the
reaching
world.
all-time high. This is going to affect all of us.
It is the lungs of the world.
And
Mhm.
yet we have a Brazilian president who is up for re-election this year. Awful man named Jair Bolsonaro.
The Brazilian
The
Trump.
Brazilian Trump, absolutely. Luckily, he is losing the poll in the polls right now to the center left candidate Lula da Silva. But you never you opinion polls are one thing, elections are another. That's another one we have to watch very, very carefully, because that has every bit that has
The rise-
huge impacts.
That's it. The rise of these autocratic strongmen in Russia, Putin, in Brazil, Bolsonaro. Here, Trump. In the Philippines, just gone blank. Just
Hungary, Orban,
and
Duterte in
Duterte. So on and on it goes. This is just the opposite of moving away from democracy.
Yes.
As I was telling this lovely young lady earlier, this combination of interacting with people. This is how we come to get our ideals, the debates and the understanding and seeing it from the other. And then we all have blind spots because we're human.
Right.
No matter how brilliant you are.
Exactly.
I know far more about astronomy than Newton ever could have imagined. Not because I'm a greater genius, but because I'm the beneficiary of all the brilliant men and women who were astronomers, the Neil deGrasse Tysons, the Carl Sagans, the Einsteins, the Hubbles, and on and on and on. So I therefore know more. This is by interacting and listening to all these brilliant people who know more than me and learning from them. This is how we go forward. Without that, we're going backward.
Exactly. We're going to take our first break. We will be right back with more discussion of the national and international political scene. This is the Progressive Weekly on 106liveradio.com. Please stand by.
This is the Progressive Weekly with Charlie Levinson.
Broadcasting live from Atlanta while serving the entire globe. It's the fastest growing radio on the web. It's 106liveradio.com.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
You went car shopping, you meant business. You ace vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Join me, Gavi, and Serena as we talk through everyday topics about life. You want to know what the Bible says about topics you've always had questions about? Listen in every first and third Sunday as we share what the Bible actually says on Life Talks with Gavi and Serena.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the Lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Autism, a complex developmental condition affecting the patient's ability to interact, communicate, and progress, has not one, but many subtypes. Reach out to a local group to see how you can participate. This could range from fundraising to awareness walks while enjoying the spring weather. One way to bring awareness to this issue is to educate the new generation in fostering acceptance and kindness towards the autistic community. Ella Alti, a story of a fourth grader battling society with autism, is a great way to educate your kids and start important conversations. In light of the pandemic, the autism community continues to face the worst of challenges. Make it a goal to donate as much as you can to your local Autism Society of America to further their efforts and encourage their unrelenting support for their community. For more information, please visit nationaltoday.com.
Thinking of changing your marketing strategy? 106 Live Radio is the solution you need to promote your goods and services. For a limited time only, we are offering special advertising rates on our fast-growing radio network. We can also help you create an audio commercial or a website banner that fits your business needs. It is just that simple. Visit our website at 106liveradio.com for details.
Bringing you the best shows and music 24/7 on your favorite radio. It's 106liveradio.com.
You're invited to join us as we celebrate with Chef Couture, author of Grandma's Hands, a short story and recipe book. Book signing will take place on Saturday, April 16th, 2022, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. at Lost Corners Preserve, 7300 Brandon Mill Road, Northwest, Sandy Springs, Georgia. Would love to see you there.
Download the 106 Live Radio app from your Google Play Store. Or find us on the TuneIn app.
It's Friday, which means another edition of the Progressive Weekly, 106 Live Radio. Join us for amazing guests, stimulating panel discussions, and most importantly, your calls and questions at 404-464-8785. Join me, Charlie Levinson, lifelong Georgia resident and third-generation political activist, for an informative hour of political talk on 106 Live Radio. Welcome back to the Progressive Weekly here on 106liveradio.com. Don't forget the phone number to call in, 404-464-8785. We are here with the incomparable Bernard Tanner Jr., my dear friend of many years. Bernard, let's shift over to the domestic political scene. We've got critical midterm elections coming up. The Senate right now is 50-50, a shift of one seat. Could either hand Mitch McConnell the keys to the Senate or marginalize some of our more conservative Democratic members and maybe get filibuster reform. So this coin could fall either way. Where do you see things standing as right now?
Well, I'm not relaxing because too many do not take midterms seriously enough. Now, the right does. I will give it to them. They do. We tend not to. And that's a huge and terrible mistake. Because many of the complaints that I hear say against Obama is, well, he lost ground in the midterms. Did you support him? Did you support those policies? Then you have nothing to say. You've done this. You were part of this disaster. You have to be there the long term. You can't go first and goal and then just walk away. That right. Makes no sense.
Right.
You've got to carry that ball into that end zone no matter what it takes. And that's what it takes. You've got to show up at midterms. There's too much on the line here. Now, I personally, myself, I'm against completely against the filibuster altogether. If your party has the better governing philosophy, let's have carte blanche, let's have at it. If it's a disaster, we now know that was a disaster. You've had the ball, no one could filibuster it, so now we see that it was a disaster. If it's good, and we see the effects of that being good, then there's no argument here. But historically, the filibuster has been used to stop progress.
Yes.
The civil rights bills, the voters' rights bill, the housing rights bill, women's rights, gay rights. All no, you've used it to do harm, to do evil, and so taking that weapon out of your poisonous hands for you to continue to do this, I think is the moral and the expedient thing to do.
Well, I am with you that the filibuster has been used for regressive, anti-progressive purposes. I agree with you that it needs to be much more difficult to filibuster than it is currently. However, let me give you one one important counter example,
and I'm open to it.
Okay, it was 2005. George W. Bush had just defeated John Kerry. Unfortunately, Republicans had gained seats in the Senate, held the House, and there was a very real possibility that they were going to push through a privatization scheme for Social Security. The only thing that stopped that was then Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid from Nevada having enough votes to filibuster the idea.
And you're right. You're right.
The day will come when that filibuster, we may need to stop some very, very terrible ideas because we may not have another means by which to affect legislation. So, yes, it is very frustrating in the here and now to watch the filibuster being used as it has been. It is extremely frustrating to watch two Democrats, Mr. Manchin from West Virginia and Mrs. Sinema from Arizona, blocking the thing that will get voting rights on the table. It's maddening. But there's going to come a day when we very much are going to want that filibuster back. And I believe it should be much more difficult. There should be a huge personal price to be paid for senators who want to stand on that floor to pull a Jimmy Stewart from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They should have to do that. There should be a huge it should take a physical toll on them to filibuster. And if they're on the Senate floor, that means they can't be on their phone lines to their campaign contributors. That will have an impact because the amount of time Washington senators and representatives spend on fundraising is ridiculous. So, but if you pin them down by making the filibuster much more difficult to maintain and having to be on the Senate floor, holding the floor physically, they're going to think twice about that. But I think for something like privatizing Social Security, a terrible idea whose day will never come, that option needs to be on the table. So I am very that one example is enough to make me very wary of an outright ban on the filibuster. How do you think it's worth the price to pay?
Well, and not only that, because as you were mentioning, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. What I was thinking was a man of all seasons. When he said, would you cut down every tree to corner the devil? Yes, I would. And when the devil turned on you, where could you go for cover? So that was the point, and I get it. But often, some of these people still agreeing with you, but they're willing to pay that awful price. I don't know, how often you've gone to the gym, but you get in the sauna and you sweat out too much perspiration. You will get terrible cramps, just terrible. You have to quickly, get the fluids back into your body to prevent those cramps. But Strom Thurmond, who still to this day has the record of the longest filibuster, in the Senate, was filibustering the Civil Rights Bill.
He was,
and he had sweated. He had literally, turned himself into living beef jerky, so that he would not have to go to the men's room, and he could stand there, hour after hour after hour, filibustering just immoral, principled, legislation. Saying awful things about race mixing, which we now know
was the penultimate hypocrisy on his part.
So so many of these people, they're so awful.
Yeah,
they're willing to pay that price.
Mhm.
Usually when I hear the comparison, well, you Democrats are no different. No, George W. Bush was not justly elected. That was a farce.
Mhm.
But we didn't storm the Capitol and kill people.
That's
We
right.
didn't cause tens of millions of dollars
Mhm.
worth of damage. We didn't try to overthrow the country. And he legitimately was not justly elected.
Mhm. Yeah.
But we didn't behave that way.
No.
Al Gore did not behave that way.
Nope. He did concede.
He conceded.
He did concede. He did
to a decision that he did not even agree with.
Right.
And he conceded.
Mhm.
He was adult about it.
Mhm.
So how have they behaved? They're willing to overthrow the government. They're willing to sweat, for days until your body has to physically undergo those terrible cramps
Mhm.
to stand there
Mhm.
to filibuster legislation that is evil.
Mhm.
It's evil.
Yeah.
So
or filibustering good legislation, filibustering the good legislation. I think is what you meant to say.
That's right.
Yeah. But in the process, taking a stand for evil, taking
evil.
a stand for segregation, for lynching, for all the horrors of white supremacy.
So I do agree, and I think you're right that it has to be moderated, but with the understanding that often they are willing to pay that price to further their evil. They're willing to do it. We know now, that no man is a god. That
No.
it's absurd. But you had kamikazes who were willing to blow themselves up, and all the men that they could, smashing those planes packed full of explosives to die for their emperor, who they believed to be a god. They were willing to pay that price, even though it was nonsense. He was a man.
Yeah, the kamikaze pilots of World War II, the 19 hijackers from 9/11. Yes.
So-
when you're dealing, but you cannot reason with that level of extremism. The only thing you can do is protect yourself as best as you can, and try to institute policies that do not give rise to that level of hatred and rage, the blind rage. And we see this throughout history, the rage that Cromwell exploited in 1640, that Robespierre exploited in 1789, that Vladimir Lenin exploited in 1917, that Hitler exploited in 1932. The goal of progressivism is to never let it get to that point. Never let the socioeconomics of us reach that level of fracture, so that people gravitate to that desperation. In the 1932 presidential election, the communist presidential candidate got 100,000 votes, because that's how desperate people were getting in the Great Depression. Now, thank goodness, enough people stayed within the mainstream and swapped out Hoover for Roosevelt. But imagine if things had gotten worse by 1936.
It was
what extreme would the United States have embraced then?
And almost did, and Huey Long. So, possibly and Lindbergh and a few others. But it was what Roosevelt in the end became what Gore Vidal said. He was the man who saved capitalism.
Yes.
By reforming it.
Yes.
And you think of today, the right wing, truly odious people like Ann Coulter, who said, well, he palled around with Uncle Joe, Stalin, as if they were, no, they were nothing alike. And you make them understand that the economic situation was so bad that the Germans went with Hitler and the Nazis. The Spanish went with Franco and the fascists, as did Italy. And in Russia, Joseph Stalin was able to consolidate his power.
Yeah.
We got Franklin Roosevelt. Do you understand how fortunate we were?
Yes. Amen.
And you're deriding that, not understanding how incredibly fortunate we were.
Yeah.
And you look at them as if they've lost their minds, because it seems as if they've lost their minds.
Look, it was a choice that no one should have to make, choosing between Hitler and Stalin. Both Hitler and Stalin were both monstrous, evil men. But Roosevelt and Churchill had a terrible calculation to make. And they, kind of like what I was saying on my first show, if we're to get at least the energy, our energy supplies back on track in the short term, we might have to cut a deal with Maduro in Venezuela. I'm not singing Maduro's praises. He's an awful person. Whose economic model has completely failed, and he's using repressive means to maintain power rather than give it up in a free and fair election, which would certainly happen if one were held in Venezuela. But Maduro's not the one invading another country, and Maduro is far and away a lesser threat. So let's cut a deal with him, further isolate Russia's energy supplies from needing to be used, and go from there.
It's a matter of being pragmatic.
Being pragmatic, but the choice Roosevelt and Churchill made, that was orders of magnitude more critical and more awful. Having to ally with Joseph Stalin to stop the bigger threat that was Hitler. But if you look at how history unfolded, Bernard, that choice has been justified.
It was in the end.
We did win the Cold War.
Yeah, in the end, without a doubt, it is far more understandable, and we see it.
Yeah.
You know, and again, when you speak to right wing, well, Stalin killed more. Okay, then why didn't Hitler kill more? Because he had gotten tired of killing. Said, okay, that's enough. No, because he was stopped. That's why he didn't kill more.
Yeah.
So your point is what again?
Right.
That's right. You didn't even consider that.
Yes.
It wasn't that we've killed one person too many. That's enough. No, he would have continued killing like a cancer.
Right.
He was stopped. We had to make a pragmatic decision. In many ways, there's many things about Lyndon Johnson that I find repulsive.
Right. Yes.
But he's the one who pushed through that civil rights legislation.
One of the most complicated figures in 20th century history would be Lyndon Johnson.
The
racist who did more for civil rights than any other president, arguably more than Barack Obama. From a legislative standpoint, not a symbolic standpoint, but from a legislative standpoint,
without a doubt.
Johnson beats Obama. That's just fact.
And the Kennedy brothers.
Yes.
He resented. He said, because when I was young, the two Kennedys, Bobby and John, were on the walls of most black families. And Johnson resented. I belong up there. And honestly, he did belong up there.
If you look at the legislation. But the difficult choices leaders make, and this, and let's pivot to the difficult choices President Biden is faced with right now. A pandemic he didn't create, but has certainly gotten better under his watch. An unemployment figure that has gotten better under his watch.
Incredibly better.
Yeah.
To an extent that I don't know why people don't know of it.
But because now it seems like people are always looking for the bad. And President Biden, he didn't create the supply chain issues. That was the private sector failing to ramp up post-pandemic. This would have happened regardless of how the 2020 election went.
It was a terrible handoff.
Yes. And that's not even talking about the insurrection, but the choices President Biden has had to make have been, he hasn't had an easy choice.
No.
He hasn't had a break, but at the same time, he's the man in charge. And when people have to, check out mortgage rates to fill up their gas tank, and that's, he's the man in charge, and he's going to get the blame for that. That's the sad truth. How do is there any way to alter that truth, though?
Well, one thing, again, being pragmatic. One thing that Trump is very good at, unfortunately, is trumpeting his successes, even when they're not his or they're non-existent. No, you are the least racist person I know. Number one, you don't know the people that I know. And the people that I know, including the whites, they think that you're a racist jackass. So obviously what you're saying is not true. So again, but he will say that. He's good at it.
Yes.
We've got to get better at telling people this is the good that we've done. Even if it takes, the Roosevelt, fireside chats. This is what we accomplished this week or this month. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Help me do it.
Yeah.
Kennedy, I need your vote. I need your help. I need your support. This is what we're trying to get done. This is how it will help you. This is what we've done, and this is what we hope to do in the future, that we've got to do in the future.
So, the problem with the left isn't so much a problem. It's not a problem of policies. It's a problem of salesmanship. We have got to become better salespeople. We've got to sell it better. Because if you, I mean, let's be honest. If you look at the polls right now, it's not looking good.
It's not looking good.
And it's going to, and you look at the huge following Stacey Abrams has in the state of Georgia. Is it going to do any good if she's held down by what appears to be a Biden undertow? That's these are the stakes here. And we have to get better at the sales.
We do, because if you look, because I believe had Dr. King lived or Robert Kennedy lived, the rest of the 20th century would have been radically different and for the better.
Yes.
But we lost him. But then Hubert Humphrey lost by less than 1%.
Yeah.
Out of those precincts, less than
it was very close. He battled back. He was down 30 points at one point. In some polls, he was even behind Wallace. He was trailing in third place. He battled back to within less than a point, and some of those states of Wisconsin, New Jersey, Illinois were very, very close.
Very close. But he lost by a narrow margin. And we got Richard Nixon.
But what was part of Humphrey's problem? Humphrey couldn't get the far left to hold their nose and make a pragmatic decision and stick with Humphrey for his flaws, and there were many,
because we're human.
Yes,
we have flaws.
Yeah,
so you have to be pragmatic.
Yes, and now we will never know whether Hubert Humphrey would have, having been elected, would have escaped LBJ's shadow and done the right thing and gotten us out of Vietnam sooner, and focused instead on continuing to build the social safety net that Roosevelt and Truman and Kennedy and Johnson had been working on. But instead, we took that huge leap back with Richard Nixon
And as I told someone years ago, because he reminded me of it, he said, I remember years ago, Bernard, you said to the right of Nixon was Reagan, to the right of Reagan was George W. Bush, and to the right of George W. Bush will be the goose step. He said, I'm horrified by the fact that you seem to have been right.
Trump is a fascist.
He's a fascist.
He is a fascist, every bit as much as Bolsonaro and Putin and Orban and the others we were talking about in the earlier segment. We have got to take our next break. Stick with us. This is the Progressive Weekly on 106liveradio.com. Please stand by.
Broadcasting live from Atlanta while serving the entire globe. It's the fastest growing radio on the web. It's 106liveradio.com.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, is so common that it's likely you know at least one person with this functional disorder. Some IBS facts are 13 to 20% of individuals, approximately 5 to 7.5 million individuals are living with IBS. People of all ages have IBS, from young children to the elderly. The economic burden of IBS is $6.5 billion annually. Individuals with IBS miss on average 13 days of work per year. leading to a further $8 billion in lost productivity. The primary symptoms are what we call the ABCDs of IBS: abdominal pain, bloating, constipation, and diarrhea. Symptoms can come and go, so you might feel well for a while only to get symptoms again. For more information, please visit badgut.org.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, GOAT, acronym, stands for greatest of all time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work. Sorry, I'm late. Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Thinking of changing your marketing strategy? 106 Live Radio is the solution you need to promote your goods and services. For a limited time only, we are offering special advertising rates on our fast-growing radio network. We can also help you create an audio commercial or a website banner that fits your business needs. It is just that simple. Visit our website at 106liveradio.com for details.
Bringing you the best shows in music 24/7 on your favorite radio. It's 106liveradio.com.
You're invited to join us as we celebrate with Chef Couture, author of Grandma's Hands, a short story and recipe book. Book signing will take place on Saturday, April 16th, 2022, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. at Lost Corners Preserve, 7300 Brandon Mill Road, Northwest, Sandy Springs, Georgia. Would love to see you there.
Let's face it, times are still hard for many families. If you're among those struggling to put food on the table, there is no shame in asking for help, and that help is available. Sustaining Ministries Food Pantry, led by Pastor Brian Downing of Oakdale Church of God, has already given away tons of food and other necessities to families facing financial challenges. The location is 1631 Cooper Lake Road in Smyrna, and they are open Sundays from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Additionally, if you are in a position to donate supplies, your gift would mean so very much to families in need. Go to sustainingministries.com for more information. A public service announcement from the Progressive Weekly and 106liveradio.com.
This is the Progressive Weekly with Charlie Levinson.
This is the time where we always say, where did the hour go? Because we're almost finished. Bernard, thank you again for being here. It's been such a pleasure. Tell us more about your upcoming podcast.
Well, I'm developing a podcast, and hopefully it will be available very soon, hopefully within the end of next month.
Okay.
It's the Bernard Tanner Jr. podcast, believe it or not.
Okay.
It's going through several inclinations of names, but they were suggesting that be the one.
Okay.
You know? And again, speaking of history, philosophy, religion, politics, things that enlighten. There was something the great Thomas Paine said. He said, the mind once enlightened can never again go dark.
It's amazing.
So it's our responsibility to bring light into the world. So all things, as the great Roman writer Terence said, all things that pertain to men, I understand. And one of the things as a man that I do understand is that it's our responsibility as the leading species on this planet to bring enlightenment to the world, to do battle, like a dragon against any lies that hold us back. Because if you look at all the national arrogance, all the racisms, all the classisms, all the gender resentment, or the misogyny, it's all based on lies, and those lies have got to be slain so that the human spirit can fly free, and that we give a better world to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren than the one that we inherited.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would include homophobia and
homophobia.
transphobia
Thank you.
in that litany. Do you feel that with enlightenment comes empowerment? Because a lot of the shows on this network deal with personal empowerment. I deal with empowerment through politics. Dr. Harper will be on next. She deals with the empowerment of finding one's purpose in life, and a lot of spiritually based shows on this network. And is that something you feel that with enlightenment comes empowerment?
Without a doubt. There was an important story that my favorite uncle, my Uncle Alvin, told me, and it was the Pope. He was studying Michelangelo as he was finishing his David, and he walked around it and he told Michelangelo, because they had a very contentious, relationship. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, The Agony and the Ecstasy with Heston. But he said, how do you do it, Michelangelo? How is that possible to create something like this? And Michelangelo said, it's a very simple thing, Your Holiness. I get a fine piece of marble. I study it, and I envision a man. Then I get my hammer and my chisel, and I knock away everything that isn't a man.
I believe that movie, Rex Harrison played the Pope, right? Okay.
So I've taken that and said, we are all this fine piece of marble. So metaphorically, we have to take that hammer and chisel and knock away all the brutality, all the willful stupidity, all the racism, all the nationalism, all the pettiness, all the stupidity. It has to be knocked away and sanded away. And at the end of it, we're standing before our fellow human beings as the masterpiece.
Great way to end it. Bernard Tanner Jr., thank you so much for being here. And that brings us to the end of another Progressive Weekly. We hope you'll keep watching and keep watching us on 106liveradio.com. In the meantime, I'm Charlie Levinson. Be safe, be well, and have a wonderful weekend. We're coming to the end of another great show here at the Progressive Week. Remember, your opinion, your voice, your interests matter, but they only matter to the extent you make them known.